Damian Blackwell had never had to wait for anything in his life. At 28, he commanded a real estate empire worth billions, owned mansions on 3 continents, and collected cars like other people collected stamps. That Tuesday morning, while savoring his $500 a cup Colombian coffee in the penthouse of his Manhattan high-rise, he admired the panoramic view of the city he practically owned. "Mr. Blackwell?" The hesitant voice of Miranda, his secretary of 5 years, echoed through the intercom. "What is it, Miranda?" Damian didn't even look up from the Wall Street Journal. "Your grandmother is on line 1. She says it's urgent." Damian sighed. At 83, Vivian Blackwell was the only person in the world who could still make him feel like a 7-year-old caught stealing cookies from the pantry. "Put her through." "Damian, my dear." His grandmother's aristocratic voice practically sang through the phone. "Grandma Vivienne, what an unexpected pleasure. What can I do for you?" "Actually, darling, I'm the one doing something for you. Do you remember the Montenegro family's daughter? Those European bankers?" Damian frowned. "Vaguely. Why?" "Well, Isadora Montenegro will arrive in New York tomorrow, and you two are going to meet at Serenity Springs Resort for a romantic week. It's all arranged." The coffee nearly went down the wrong way. "Excuse me, what?" "You heard me perfectly, Damian. At 28, you should already be married and giving me great-grandchildren. Isadora is perfect for you, beautiful, educated, from a good family. Grandma, I have absolutely no intention of—" "Oh, but you do. Because if you don't show up there Friday, I'm donating your entire inheritance to charity." Damian nearly dropped his cup. "You wouldn't do that. Try me, darling. I know a dozen charities that would be delighted with a few billion. You have until Friday to show up at the resort with a girlfriend. If you don't have one, Isadora will be perfect." The call ended abruptly. Damian stared at the phone for a long moment. His grandmother controlled a fortune that made his look like pocket change, and knowing Vivian Blackwell, she would definitely follow through on her threat. "Miranda!" he shouted, jumping from his chair. "Yes, sir? I need a girlfriend. Now." Miranda blinked several times. "Excuse me, sir?" "You heard me. A girlfriend. Someone who can pretend to be madly in love with me for a week. Pay whatever it takes." I'm not sure exactly how to—" "Then figure it out." Damian began pacing back and forth. "Call an agency, hire an actress, I don't care, just get me someone before Friday." 5 miles away, in a small Brooklyn apartment, Serafina Sarah Cole was having one of the worst days of her life. And considering she had lost her parents at 16 and had been fighting alone ever since, that meant something. "I'm sorry, Sarah," said Dr. Mitchell, the public hospital doctor, with that expression she already knew too well. "The tests confirmed it. Your brother needs the surgery as soon as possible." Sarah swallowed hard, squeezing Tommy's hand. Her 15-year-old younger brother, who lay in the hospital bed looking much more fragile than his 15 years. How much will it cost?" $250,000. I know it's a lot, but without health insurance. "I'll get it," Sarah said automatically, though she had no idea how. Working double shifts as a waitress and cleaner, she could barely pay rent. "How much time do we have?" "A few weeks, a month at most." Sarah nodded, trying not to break down in front of her brother. "It's okay. We'll figure it out, Tommy. I promise." In the hallway, she finally allowed the tears to fall. $250,000. She could work 3 lifetimes and never save that amount. Her phone rang. "Sarah, it's Margie." Her restaurant boss's voice sounded tense. "Hi, Margie. I can work extra tonight if—" "Actually, honey, I have to let you go." Sarah's world stopped. "What?" "The restaurant is cutting costs. I'm sorry, but today is your last day." The call ended. Sarah leaned against the hospital wall and closed her eyes. No job, no money, no hope. "Excuse me?" A cultured female voice made her open her eyes. An elegant, middle-aged woman wearing an expensive suit stood in front of her. "Are you Serafina Cole?" "I am—" "Why?" "My name is Miranda Wells. I work for Damian Blackwell. I believe you know Café Luna where you work." "Worked?" Sarah frowned. "How do you know where I work?" "We did some research. We're looking for someone with your qualifications." "My qualifications for what?" Miranda smiled. "To pretend to be my boss's girlfriend for a week." Sarah blinked. "I'm sorry? I know it sounds strange, but it's a legitimate job. A week at a luxury resort pretending to be in love with one of New York's richest men. The payment is substantial." "How substantial?" Miranda pulled an envelope from her pocket. $300,000. Sarah felt her knees weaken. "You're kidding me." I'm completely serious, but I need an answer now. My boss needs to leave New York in 2 hours. I don't understand. Why me? You're beautiful, but not intimidating. Natural, not artificial. And our investigators confirmed that you're, let's say, someone who wouldn't be interested in his money for the wrong reasons. Miranda glanced discreetly at the oncology ward where Tommy was hospitalized. Sarah followed her gaze and understood. They knew about Tommy. They knew she was desperate. If I accept, it would just be pretending? Nothing more? Absolutely. You'd be paid to act. Hold his hand, smile at the right moments, convince an 80-year-old woman that you're in love. $300,000. More than enough for Tommy's surgery and still have money left to start over. Do I have to decide now? Miranda checked her watch. In exactly 5 minutes, Blackwell's car is waiting downstairs. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. Tommy needed her. And if pretending love for a week was the price, if I do this, can you advance part of the payment? For the hospital? Miranda smiled. Already arranged, a transfer of $100,000 will be made as soon as you sign the contract. Sarah felt her heart race. And if I can't convince this woman? Then you keep the $100,000 for the effort and my boss faces the consequences. 4 minutes. Sarah thought about her entire life of struggle. The sleepless nights working, the bills piling up. The desperation in Tommy's eyes when doctors spoke words he didn't fully understand, but knew weren't good. 3 minutes. She thought about the fairy tales she used to read to Tommy when he was little, after their parents died. The stories where the poor girl met the prince and everything was magically resolved. She had never believed those stories. 2 minutes. But what if? What if for once in her life, just once, she could be the heroine of her own story? What if she could save Tommy? 1 minute. I accept, said Sarah, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. Miranda smiled and extended a folder. Excellent. Sign here. The car's waiting. Wait, I'm not even going to meet him first. How am I going to pretend to be in love with someone I've never seen? Trust me, dear, Miranda said, as Sarah signed the contract with trembling hands. When it comes to Damien Blackwell, pretending to be in love is the easy part. The hard part is pretending you're not. 15 minutes later, Sarah was sitting in the leather seat of a limousine, still wearing her wrinkled waitress uniform, holding a folder that would change her life forever. Through the dark window, she watched Manhattan pass by in a blur, taking her toward a world she never imagined existed, and toward a man who, in just 5 minutes, had bought a week of her life. What she didn't know was that sometimes, a week can change everything forever. The helicopter descended toward Serenity Springs like a metallic bird cutting through the golden afternoon sky. Sarah pressed her face to the window, watching the exclusive resort unfold below, pristine white beaches, infinity pools that seemed to blend with the ocean, and villas that looked like they belonged in architectural magazines. First time in a helicopter? The pilot's voice crackled through her headset. First time in a lot of things, Sarah muttered, clutching the leather seat as they touched down. Through the helicopter's glass, she spotted him immediately. Even from 50 yards away, Damien Blackwell commanded attention, like a magnet pulls metal. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a crisp white shirt that probably cost more than her monthly rent, he stood with the kind of casual arrogance that came from never doubting you belonged exactly where you were. Their eyes met through the glass. His were steel gray, sharp enough to cut diamonds, and completely, utterly cold. The moment Sarah stepped onto the landing pad, the coastal wind whipping her dark hair around her face, Damien's expression shifted from indifferent to something approaching disgust. You've got to be kidding me. His voice was smooth, cultured, and laced with disdain. Miranda, please tell me this is some kind of elaborate joke. Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks. She was acutely aware of her discount store sundress, the nicest thing she owned, next to his obvious designer everything. Mr. Blackwell, Miranda stepped forward. May I present Serafina Cole, my what exactly? Damien circled Sarah like a predator evaluating prey. My charity case, my social experiment? Your girlfriend, Sarah said quietly, finding her voice. At least that's what you're paying me to pretend to be. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise maybe, but it vanished quickly. Right, the actress. He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne. Let me guess, community theater? Local commercials? Or are you completely new to this? I'm new to a lot of things, apparently. Sarah lifted her chin, including being insulted by someone before proper introductions. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Touché. though I hardly think we need formal introductions when this is purely transactional. Mr. Blackwell, Miranda interrupted, checking her watch. Your grandmother is expecting you both for dinner in 2 hours. Of course she is, Damien sighed. Fine. Miranda, get her presentable. There should be appropriate clothing in the villa. He turned to walk away, then paused. Oh, and Miss Cole? My grandmother is nobody's fool. If you can't convince her we're madly in love, neither of us gets what we want. So I suggest you study up on affection. The villa was a monument to wealth that made Sarah slightly dizzy. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the private beach, marble floors reflected crystal chandeliers, and the bathroom was larger than her entire apartment. Miranda laid out 3 evening dresses on the king-sized bed. Each probably cost more than Sarah made in 6 months. The blue brings out your eyes, Miranda said diplomatically. Mr. Blackwell prefers understated elegance. What Mr. Blackwell prefers, Sarah said, holding up the midnight blue dress, is apparently not me. Don't take it personally, dear. He's not exactly warm with anyone. Sarah slipped into the dress, marveling at how the silk felt against her skin. Then how exactly am I supposed to convince his grandmother we're in love? Miranda smiled mysteriously. You might be surprised how easy that becomes. An hour later, Sarah barely recognized herself in the mirror. The dress fit perfectly. Her hair had been styled into soft waves, and the makeup artist had worked magic with subtle cosmetics. She looked expensive. Ready? Miranda asked. As I'll ever be. They walked through the resort's main building, past other guests who looked like they'd stepped from magazine covers. Sarah caught glimpses of the dining terrace through massive glass doors, candlelit tables, crystal glasses catching the sunset, soft jazz floating through the air. And there, at the best table with the perfect ocean view, sat a woman who could only be Vivienne Blackwell. Even at 83, she was formidable. Silver hair pulled back in an elegant chignon, wearing pearls that probably had their own insurance policy, and eyes the same steel gray as her grandson's. But where Damien's were cold, hers sparkled with sharp intelligence and what looked suspiciously like mischief. Damien stood as they approached, and for a moment, just a moment, something shifted in his expression as he saw Sarah. His eyes traveled from her face to the dress and back again, and his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Grandmother, he said smoothly, I'd like you to meet Serafina. Vivienne's keen gaze swept over Sarah like a scanner. My dear, she said finally, extending a jeweled hand, you're absolutely lovely. And please call me Vivienne. Anyone who can make my grandson smile like that must be special indeed. Sarah glanced at Damien. He wasn't smiling. Thank you, Mrs. Vivienne. It's wonderful to finally meet you. Oh, the pleasure is entirely mine. Damien has told me so little about you. I'm positively dying of curiosity. Vivienne's eyes twinkled dangerously. Sit, sit. I want to hear everything. As they settled into their chairs, Damien's hand found Sarah's on the table. His touch was warm, surprisingly gentle, but she could feel the tension in his fingers. So tell me, dear, Vivienne said, sipping her wine. How did you two meet? Sarah's mind went blank. They hadn't prepared a story. She looked at Damien, panic rising. Actually, Damien said smoothly, it was rather embarrassing. I literally ran into her, knocked her right off her feet outside a coffee shop. How romantic. Love at first collision? Vivienne laughed. And what did you think of my grandson, Serafina? Sarah looked at Damien, his hand still covering hers, and felt something unexpected flutter in her chest. I thought, she said slowly, that he was the most arrogant, self-centered person I'd ever met. Vivienne's eyebrows shot up. Damien's hand tightened on hers. And now? Vivienne prompted, clearly delighted. Sarah met Damien's eyes, seeing something new there. Vulnerability, maybe. Fear that she'd blown their charade. Now, she said softly, I think he might be worth the trouble. For the first time since she'd met him, Damien Blackwell looked genuinely surprised. And somewhere in that surprise, something dangerous began to bloom. The dinner continued with Vivienne's relentless interrogation disguised as polite conversation. Sarah found herself weaving an intricate web of half-truths and careful omissions, while Damien's hand remained on hers, a lifeline in stormy waters. And what do you do for work, dear? Vivienne asked, cutting into her lobster with surgical precision. Sarah's throat went dry. I work in hospitality. How lovely. Which establishment? Before Sarah could answer, Damien's thumb traced a small circle on her knuckle, a gesture so unexpectedly intimate that she forgot how to breathe. She's taking a sabbatical, he interjected smoothly, to focus on us. Vivian's eyes sparkled with approval. How wonderfully romantic. Though I must say, Damien, you look different tonight. Different how? His voice carried a warning note. Relaxed. Content even. It suits you. She turned to Sarah. Whatever you're doing to my grandson, keep doing it. Heat crept up Sarah's neck. I'm not doing anything special. Nonsense. In 30 years, I've never seen him hold someone's hand through an entire dinner conversation. Damien's fingers stiffened against hers, and he started to pull away. Without thinking, Sarah turned her palm up and interlaced their fingers, anchoring him to her. His sharp intake of breath was barely audible, but she felt it. Excuse me, Vivian said suddenly, rising gracefully. I need to powder my nose. Don't go anywhere, you two. The night is young. The moment she disappeared, Damien tried to extract his hand. Sarah held firm. Let go, he said quietly. Your grandmother is watching us through the glass door. He glanced over, saw Vivian's reflection lingering near the entrance, and sank back into his chair. Clever girl. I'm not stupid, Mr. Blackwell. I know what I'm being paid to do. Damien, he corrected, his voice softer than before. If we're supposed to be intimate, you should use my name. Damien. The word felt strange on her tongue. Too personal. Too real. They sat in silence, hands still joined, watching the ocean reflect moonlight like scattered diamonds. Despite everything, the pretense, the money, his earlier cruelty, Sarah felt oddly peaceful. Why hospitality? He asked suddenly. What? You said you work in hospitality. Why that lie? Sarah studied his profile. It's not entirely a lie. I was a waitress, taking care of people, making sure they're comfortable. It's hospitality. Was? I got fired yesterday right before Miranda found me at the hospital. She hadn't meant to add that last part. His head turned sharply. Hospital? Sarah cursed herself. It's nothing, just family stuff. What kind of family stuff requires $300,000? She yanked her hand away. That's not part of the deal. You bought a week of acting, not my life story. Something flickered across his features. Hurt? Before the familiar coldness returned. Of course. How foolish of me to think there might be more to this. Vivian's return saved them from whatever was building between them. I hope I wasn't gone too long, she said, settling back into her chair. You both look rather intense. Just discussing tomorrow's plans, Damien said smoothly. I thought we'd take the yacht out. Sarah loves the ocean. Sarah blinked. She'd never been on a yacht in her life. Wonderful, though you might want to warn her about your competitive sailing style. Competitive? Sarah asked. Vivian laughed. My grandson treats every activity like a conquest. Racing, sailing, even chess. He's quite ruthless. I prefer focused, Damien said dryly. You capsized a boat last summer because you refused to give up during a storm. The boat was fine. Eventually, Sarah found herself smiling despite everything. Let me guess. You blamed the weather? I blamed inferior equipment, he said. And for just a moment, his eyes warmed. Though the Coast Guard disagreed. You called the Coast Guard? Sarah was laughing now, the sound surprising them both. 3 times, Vivian added gleefully. He insisted they were overreacting. It was barely a tropical storm, Damien protested, and Sarah caught something she hadn't expected. Embarrassment. He was actually embarrassed. Promise me you'll wear a life jacket tomorrow, Sarah said, still giggling. I don't need... He stopped, looking at her face. Really looking, maybe for the first time. Her cheeks were flushed from laughter, her eyes bright with genuine amusement, and something inside his chest did a strange, unfamiliar flip. I'll wear the life jacket, he said quietly. Vivian's smile was pure triumph. Later, walking back to their villa under a canopy of stars, they maintained careful distance between them. The ocean breeze carried the scent of jasmine and salt air. You handled that well, Damien said eventually. Your grandmother likes me. My grandmother likes anyone who can make me look foolish. But there was no bite to his words. They reached the villa's entrance, and awkwardness descended like fog. 1 villa, 1 bedroom. I'll take the couch, Damien said quickly. It's your villa, I can... The couch is fine. He paused at the door. Sarah? She looked up, surprised by the use of her name. Earlier, at dinner, when you said I might be worth the trouble. His jaw worked as if the words were difficult. Did you mean it? The question hung between them like a bridge neither quite dared to cross. Ask me again in 6 days, she said softly. Something shifted in his expression. Hope, maybe, or fear. 6 days. 6 days. As he held the door open for her, their shoulders brushed. Just a whisper of contact. Nothing more. But it was enough to change everything. Dawn painted the ocean in shades of gold and coral as Sarah stood on the villa's terrace, coffee mug warming her hands. She'd barely slept, hyper-aware of Damien's presence in the next room, the soft sound of his breathing, the rustle of sheets when he moved. "You're up early?" His voice, rough with sleep, made her turn. He stood in the doorway wearing only pajama pants, his dark hair disheveled, and Sarah had to grip her coffee cup tighter. She'd expected him to be attractive in an expensive suit. She hadn't expected him to be devastating in morning light. Couldn't sleep, she managed. The couch wasn't that uncomfortable. He moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could smell his skin. Clean, warm, utterly male. "I wasn't thinking about your sleeping arrangements." Something flickered in his eyes. "What were you thinking about?" Before she could answer, his phone buzzed. His expression hardened as he read the message. "Problem?" she asked. "My business partner. Apparently there's a crisis that requires my immediate attention." "On your vacation?" He looked at her strangely. "This isn't a vacation, Sarah. It's damage control." "Right. The fake girlfriend arrangement." For a moment she'd forgotten. "Of course," she said quietly. "The performance." Something shifted in his expression. "Sarah!" "Mr. Blackwell." A woman's voice, bright and musical, interrupted them. They turned to see a stunning blonde approaching across the beach, wearing a white sundress that probably cost more than most cars. Even from a distance, Sarah could tell she belonged in Damien's world in a way Sarah never would. "Who is that?" Sarah whispered. Damien's jaw tightened. "Trouble." The woman climbed the terrace steps with feline grace. "Damien, darling, what a delicious surprise." "Isadora." His voice was carefully neutral. "I wasn't expecting you until tomorrow." Isadora Montenegro, the banker's daughter, the woman Vivian had originally chosen. "I caught an earlier flight, couldn't wait to see you." Isadora's dark eyes swept over Sarah dismissively. "And you are?" "Serafina Cole," Sarah said, extending her hand. "Damien's girlfriend." Isadora's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "How unexpected. I was under the impression Damien was unattached." "Things change," Damien said, stepping closer to Sarah. His hand found the small of her back, a gesture of claim and protection that made her shiver. "Indeed they do." Isadora's laugh was like crystal breaking. "Well, I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to get acquainted. I'm staying at the resort for the week." After she left, Sarah sagged against the railing. "She's beautiful. She's calculating. She's perfect for you. Rich, sophisticated, probably never worked a day in her life." "Sarah," his voice was sharp. "Stop." "Stop what?" "Being realistic. She's everything I'm not." "Exactly." The word came out more forcefully than he'd intended. She looked at him in surprise. "I mean," he ran a hand through his hair, suddenly looking younger. "Forget it. We should get ready for the yacht." The yacht was magnificent. 60 feet of gleaming white perfection cutting through azure waters. Damien handled it with the same commanding confidence he applied to everything else. And despite herself, Sarah was impressed. "You really know what you're doing," she called over the wind. "I've been sailing since I was 7. He adjusted the sail with practiced ease. "My father thought it would build character." "Did it?" "It taught me that sometimes you have to navigate storms alone." Something in his voice made her study his profile. "Is that what you think you're doing now? Navigating a storm?" Before he could answer, the sky opened up. The storm hit like a slap. Sudden, violent, and completely unexpected. One moment they were sailing through perfect weather. The next they were fighting 20-foot swells and driving rain. "Hold on!" Damien shouted, wrestling with the wheel as the yacht pitched wildly. Sarah gripped the railing, spray soaking her clothes, heart hammering against her ribs. This wasn't the gentle sailing trip she'd imagined. "Should we head back?" she yelled. "Working on it." But the engine chose that moment to sputter and die. For a heartbeat, they stared at each other through the driving rain. Then Damien was moving, all business and controlled urgency. "Life jackets, now." He tossed her one, already strapping on his own. "Radio the Coast Guard." "I don't know how." "Channel 16. Tell them we're disabled, give them our position." He was already diving into the engine compartment. Sarah fumbled with the radio, her hands shaking from cold and fear. When the Coast Guard's voice crackled through, relief flooded her system. "This is yacht redemption. We're disabled and taking on water." 20 minutes later, as the Coast Guard cutter pulled alongside, Damien emerged from the engine compartment covered in grease and seawater but grinning. "Got it running," he announced. "We can make it back on our own power." The Coast Guard officer shook his head. "Mr. Blackwell, this is the third time this year. The weather reports were wrong," Damien protested. "Sir, you sailed directly into a storm warning." Sarah stared at him. "You knew there was a storm coming? I thought we could outrun it." "You thought?" She couldn't finish the sentence. "You risked both our lives because you thought you could outrun a storm?" "Sarah." "No." She backed away from him, suddenly seeing him clearly. "This is who you are, isn't it? You think you can control everything, the weather, people, circumstances. You think money and arrogance can overcome anything. That's not—" "Yes, it is." Her voice broke slightly. "You don't care about anyone but yourself. Not me, not your grandmother, not even your own safety." The words hit him like physical blows. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly. You're exactly what I thought you were when I first met you. Selfish and reckless and what?" His voice was quiet now. "Dangerous. And not worth the trouble after all." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sound of waves against the hull. When they finally made it back to shore, they didn't speak. Sarah went straight to the villa and locked herself in the bathroom, where she finally allowed herself to cry. Through the door, she heard Damien's phone ring, heard him answer in clipped professional tones. Business. Always business. She'd been right about him from the beginning, so why did proving it hurt so much? Sarah woke to silence. After 2 days of tension so thick it could be cut with a knife, the quiet felt ominous. She'd barely seen Damien. He'd been taking his meals elsewhere, sleeping God knows where, maintaining the pretense for his grandmother while giving Sarah the space she'd demanded. She should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt hollow. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Sarah?" Vivian's voice, gentle but determined. "May I come in?" Sarah opened the door to find Damien's grandmother holding a tea service and wearing an expression of maternal concern. "I thought you might like some company," Vivian said, settling into the villa's sitting area. "You've seemed rather melancholy lately." "I'm fine." Sarah accepted the delicate porcelain cup, inhaling the fragrant steam. "My dear, I've been managing the emotions of Blackwell men for 60 years. You are decidedly not fine." "Despite everything," Sarah smiled. "Is it that obvious? To someone who's been watching you both dance around each other for days, absolutely." Vivian's eyes sparkled. "What did my grandson do? Why do you assume he did something?" "Because I know Damien. He's brilliant in business, ruthless in negotiations, and absolutely hopeless with matters of the heart." Sarah set down her cup. "Mrs. Blackwell, Vivian, I think there's something you should know. That you're not really his girlfriend?" Sarah's mouth fell open. "Oh, darling, did you really think you could fool me? I've been hoping for years that Damien would find someone real, someone who could see past the money and the walls he's built. When I saw how he looked at you that first night, truly looked at you, I knew you were exactly what he needed. Even though this is all fake." "Is it?" Vivian leaned forward. "Because from where I'm sitting, watching my grandson pace his room all night, refuse to eat, and snap at every staff member who comes near him, this looks remarkably like a man falling in love." Sarah's heart did something complicated. "He's arrogant and reckless and terrified," Vivian finished gently. "His parents died when he was 12, you know. Sailing accident. He was supposed to be with them that day, but he'd gotten sick." The teacup trembled in Sarah's hands. "I didn't know. He learned to navigate storms alone because he was afraid of losing anyone else he cared about. But yesterday on that yacht, he wasn't sailing alone, was he?" Sarah found Damien in the resort's art studio of all places. He stood before a large canvas, paint-stained apron over his expensive clothes, completely absorbed in the watercolor seascape he was creating. "I didn't know you painted," she said softly from the doorway. His brush stilled. "There are a lot of things you don't know about me. I'm beginning to realize that." He set down his brush, not turning around. "What do you want, Sarah?" "To apologize." That made him turn. "For what?" "For not letting you explain. For assuming the worst." She stepped closer, studying the painting. It was the view from their villa, the ocean at sunrise, peaceful and luminous. "It's beautiful. It's how I see it when I'm with you." The quiet admission hung between them like a bridge. "Damien, I should have told you about the storm warning," he said suddenly. "You're right, I am reckless, I always have been. But yesterday," he finally met her eyes. "I wasn't trying to impress you or prove something. I was trying to give you something perfect. A perfect day because you've had so few of them. How could you possibly know that? Because I recognize the look. I wore it for years after my parents died. His voice was barely above a whisper. That careful way you hold yourself, like you're afraid to want too much because it might be taken away. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Vivian told me about the accident. Did she also tell you it should have been me on that boat? Damien, no. I was supposed to go. Last-minute stomach bug kept me home. For years I wondered if I'd somehow caused it, if I was subconsciously afraid and made myself sick. You were 12. Logic doesn't apply to guilt. He turned back to the painting. I learned to sail because I needed to prove I wasn't afraid of the ocean, but I've been sailing alone ever since. Until yesterday. Until yesterday. He picked up his brush again, adding a delicate stroke of gold to the horizon. I'm not used to caring about someone else's safety more than proving a point. The confession was so honest, so raw, that Sarah felt her carefully constructed walls begin to crumble. The hospital, she said suddenly. The day we met. It was for my brother. His hand stilled. Is he sick? Leukemia. He needs surgery I can't afford. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. I've been his guardian since our parents died in a car accident when he was 8. I was 19. I had no idea what I was doing, but he was all I had left. Damien set down his brush and turned to face her fully. The 300,000 is more money than I could earn in 5 lifetimes. So when Miranda offered it, she shrugged helplessly. What kind of sister would I be if I said no? What kind of person would you be if you said yes? He asked gently. That's what you were really thinking, wasn't it? She nodded, not trusting her voice. For what it's worth, he said, stepping closer. I think you're exactly the kind of person your brother needs. Someone who would do anything to save him. Even pretend to love a stranger. Even that. His voice was soft, wondering. Though I have to ask, is it still pretending? The question hovered between them, loaded with possibility and danger. I don't know, she whispered honestly. Neither do I. He reached out, slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers traced her cheek. But I'd like to find out. For real this time. No contracts, no time limits, no pretending. Damien, I know I'm not easy to love. I'm controlling and stubborn, and I take stupid risks. But I'm also learning that some storms are worth sailing into. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed, then buzzed again, and again. The spell broke. Business emergency? She asked, trying to keep the disappointment from her voice. He glanced at the phone and his expression darkened. No? Isadora. Through the studio's glass wall, they could see her approaching with purposeful stride, flanked by 2 men in expensive suits. This doesn't look good, Sarah murmured. Damien's jaw tightened. It isn't. Those men work for my biggest competitor. If Isadora's with them, she's not just after you romantically. She's after my company. He grabbed Sarah's hand. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Looking into his eyes, those steel-gray depths that had warmed from ice to flame, Sarah made her choice. Yes. Then follow my lead. And whatever happens, don't let go of my hand. As Isadora entered with her corporate sharks, Sarah understood. The real storm was just beginning. Damien, darling. Isadora's voice was honey over steel as she glided into the art studio. How creative of you. Playing with paints while your empire crumbles. The 2 men flanking her looked like sharks in Armani. Cold eyes, predatory smiles, and the unmistakable air of corporate vultures. Damien's grip on Sarah's hand tightened. Gentlemen, I wasn't aware we had a meeting scheduled. Marcus Webb, the taller man, introduced himself. Sterling Acquisitions. We've been hoping to discuss a mutually beneficial arrangement. The kind where you acquire my company for pennies on the dollar? Damien's voice was deceptively casual. How thoughtful. Isadora laughed, a sound like breaking champagne flutes. Oh, Damien. Still so dramatic. We're simply offering you an exit strategy before things get unpleasant. What things? Sarah found herself asking, though she'd promised to follow his lead. Webb's smile was razor-sharp. Ms. Cole, isn't it? Perhaps you're unaware of your boyfriend's precarious financial position. I'm aware that you're trespassing on private property, Sarah replied coolly, surprising everyone, including herself. Spirited, the second man, shorter, with eyes like black ice, observed. I can see the appeal, Blackwell, though I wonder if she'll be quite so loyal when she discovers the truth. What truth? Damien's voice carried a warning. Isadora produced a tablet, swiping to display financial documents. Your Serenity Bay project. The one you've invested everything in. It seems there are some irregularities with the environmental permits. Sarah felt Damien go rigid beside her. Irregularities that could result in criminal charges. Webb added helpfully. Fraud, corruption, environmental destruction. The kind of charges that carry prison sentences. Those permits were legitimate when they were issued, Damien said through gritted teeth. Were they? Isadora's smile was poison sweet. Or did you simply trust the wrong people? People who might have misled you about certain wetland protections? The blood drained from Damien's face. Marcus Sheffield, your former partner, the one who handled all the environmental clearances. Webb's tone was conversational. Tragic, really, how he's been cooperating with federal investigators. Quite extensively. Sarah squeezed Damien's hand, feeling him tremble with barely contained rage. What do you want? He asked finally. A complete buyout of Blackwell Industries. Today, before the story breaks tomorrow morning. Isadora's mask slipped, revealing naked ambition beneath. Sign the papers and we'll make sure the investigation focuses solely on Sheffield. Refuse, and you'll destroy me publicly. Damien's voice was flat. We'll destroy everyone you care about, Webb corrected. Your grandmother's reputation, your girlfriend's future. His eyes fixed on Sarah with predatory interest. Amazing what investigators can dig up about desperate people. Hospital bills, forged references, the things people do for money. Leave her out of this, Damien snarled, stepping protectively in front of Sarah. Then sign the papers. The silence stretched like a taut wire. Sarah could practically hear Damien's mind racing, calculating odds, searching for escape routes that didn't exist. I need 24 hours, he said finally. You have until sunset, Isadora countered. 6 hours. That's impossible. Then make it possible. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Damien, don't even think about running. We'll find you wherever you go. After they left, the studio felt like a tomb. Damien sank into a chair, head in his hands. How bad is it? Sarah asked gently. Complete annihilation. His voice was muffled. They're right. I trusted Marcus completely. If he was dirty, if those permits were fraudulent, can you fight it? With what? They've frozen my accounts, tied up my assets. Even if I could prove my innocence eventually, the scandal would destroy everything first. Sarah knelt beside his chair. There has to be another way. There isn't. He looked up, and she saw defeat in those steel-gray eyes. I'm sorry, Sarah. I can still get you your money. There are accounts they don't know about, but after tonight, being associated with me will only hurt you. Stop. She cupped his face in her hands. Just stop. You don't understand. I understand that you're giving up, and that's not the man I've come to know. The man you've come to know is a fraud. Everything I built, everything I am. It's all built on lies I didn't even know I was telling. No. Her voice was fierce. The man who saved us in that storm, who paints sunrises, who's trying to protect me right now, that man is real. The empire might be gone, but you're still here. Something flickered in his eyes. Sarah, fight Damien, not for the money or the company. Fight for us, for what we found in this place. Before he could respond, his phone rang. Miranda's name flashed on the screen. Sir? Her voice was tight with stress. I have some information about Sheffield and the permits. Damien put the call on speaker. What did you find? Sheffield didn't forge anything. The permits were legitimate when issued. But last month, the Environmental Protection Agency retroactively changed the classification of that entire coastal region. Every project in the area, including yours, is now technically in violation. Who pushed for the reclassification? That's where it gets interesting. The motion was filed by a law firm that represents Sterling Acquisitions. Sarah and Damien looked at each other. They engineered this, Sarah breathed. Created the crime so they could offer to solve it. Damien agreed, his voice hardening. Miranda, I need you to dig deeper. Find out who else they've targeted with this strategy. Already on it, sir? There might be a way to fight this. How? Vivian called 20 minutes ago. She wants to see you immediately. She said, and I quote, "It's time my grandson learned what real power looks like." For the first time in hours, Damien smiled. My grandmother has a plan. She always has a plan, Miranda confirmed. And sir, she sounded lethal. As they walked toward Vivian's suite, Sarah felt a strange mixture of hope and terror. The storm was far from over, but for the first time they weren't facing it alone. Whatever she suggests, Sarah said quietly, we face it together. Damien stopped walking, and pulled her into his arms. Together, he agreed, and kissed her with the desperation of a man who had everything to lose and everything to fight for. When they broke apart, his eyes held something new, not defeat, but determination. The final battle was about to begin. Vivian Blackwell's suite looked like a war room. Documents spread across every surface, multiple laptops humming, and 3 phones ringing in sequence. At the center of it all sat the family matriarch, looking less like a sweet grandmother and more like a corporate general planning the battle of her life. "Ah, my dears," she said without looking up from a legal document. "Right on time. Sarah, be a lamb and pour the champagne. We're about to celebrate." "Celebrate what?" Damien asked, bewildered. "Grandmother, in 4 hours they'll destroy everything I've built." "Will they?" Vivian's smile was sharp enough to cut diamonds. "How interesting. Because according to my lawyers, Sterling Acquisitions doesn't actually exist." Sarah paused, champagne bottle halfway to the glass. "What do you mean doesn't exist?" "Oh, it's a real company, but it's owned by a shell corporation, which is owned by another shell corporation, which is ultimately owned by—" Vivian pulled out a photograph and slid it across the table. "The Montenegro banking empire." The blood drained from Damien's face. "Isadora's family is behind Sterling?" "Not the family, dear. Just Isadora herself. She's been building her own empire for years, completely separate from Daddy's banking interests. Quite impressive, actually, if it weren't aimed at destroying my grandson. But the environmental permits, the investigation, all real and all orchestrated by her." Vivian tapped another document. "She spent 18 months engineering this entire scenario, bought off EPA officials, bribed Sheffield to cooperate, even arranged for the media leaks that will happen tonight." Sarah sank into a chair. She planned everything, from the beginning, from the very beginning, including her sudden appearance here. Vivian's eyes glittered dangerously. What she didn't plan for was me. "What did you do?" Damien asked, though his tone suggested he already feared the answer. "I made some phone calls. You see, the Montenegro family has been trying to expand into American markets for decades. They've been blocked by federal regulations that could mysteriously disappear with the right political pressure. You didn't offer to facilitate their American expansion in exchange for reining in their wayward daughter?" "I most certainly did." Vivian's smile was pure innocence. "Amazing how quickly they agreed when I mentioned the SEC investigation that would be launched into Sterling's corporate structure." Damien stared at his grandmother. "You threatened to destroy an entire banking dynasty?" "I threatened to expose their daughter's attempt to destroy mine." She stood, suddenly looking every inch the power player she'd always been. "Isadora has exactly 1 hour to withdraw her offer and disappear, or her family's American dreams die forever. And if she refuses—" Vivian pulled out her phone, showing them a contact list that read like a who's who of global finance. "Then I start making calls. By morning, Montenegro Banking won't be able to get a loan to buy coffee, much less expand internationally." The room fell silent except for the ticking of an antique clock. "There's one problem," Sarah said quietly. "The permits are still invalid. Even if Isadora backs off, the environmental violations are real." "Are they?" Vivian produced another folder. "Funny thing about retroactive legislation, it can be retroactively overturned. I have it on good authority that the EPA will be reversing their classification change tomorrow morning." "How?" Damien demanded. "Because the original change was based on falsified environmental data that, coincidentally, was provided by a company owned by Sterling Acquisitions." Vivian's smile turned predatory. "They forged evidence to create a crime. When that comes to light, every decision based on that evidence becomes invalid." Damien slumped in his chair. "You've been investigating this for days. Weeks, actually. I knew something was wrong when Isadora suddenly appeared in my social circle, asking casual questions about your business ventures." She moved to the window, gazing out at the resort grounds. "Did you really think I'd let some ambitious little schemer destroy my family without a fight? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you needed to learn something, darling. You've spent so long building walls, pushing people away, that you forgot what it means to let someone fight beside you." Her eyes found Sarah. Until now. Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Mrs. Blackwell, you could have taken the money and run when things got difficult. Instead, you stayed. You chose to fight for him even when he was ready to surrender." Vivian's voice softened. "That's when I knew you were real." "What happens now?" Damien asked. "Now, we wait for Isadora to realize she's been outmaneuvered. Vivian checked her watch. She should be getting the call from her father any moment. As if summoned by her words, commotion erupted outside. Through the suite's windows, they could see Isadora on her phone, pacing frantically on the beach. Her voice, shrill with panic, carried on the wind. "Daddy, you can't be serious. I've worked years on this." Webb and his partner stood nearby, looking like men who suddenly realized they'd bet on the wrong horse. "She's arguing with her father," Sarah observed. "She's losing," Vivian corrected with satisfaction. The argument continued for several minutes before Isadora threw her phone into the sand and stormed toward the resort's main building. "She's coming here," Damien said. "Of course she is. She's going to try one last desperate gambit." Vivian smoothed her skirt. "Let her come. I've been looking forward to this conversation for weeks." The knock on the door came exactly 3 minutes later. Isadora entered like a hurricane, hair disheveled, makeup smudged, designer dress wrinkled from her beach tantrum, but her eyes still held dangerous fire. "You interfering old witch," she snarled at Vivian. "You have no idea what you've done." "I've protected my family," Vivian replied calmly. "Something you clearly don't understand. This isn't over." Isadora's gaze swung to Damien. "You think you've won? You think your little waitress girlfriend will stay when she realizes what you really are? Broke, powerless, nothing but a trust fund baby whose grandmother had to save him? Isadora," Sarah's voice cut through the venom like a blade, "you're embarrassing yourself." "Am I?" Isadora laughed bitterly. "Wait until the money runs out. Wait until he can't buy you pretty dresses and expensive dinners. Wait until you're back in your little Brooklyn apartment watching your brother die because you chose love over the money that could have saved him." The words hit like physical blows. Sarah felt Damien stiffen beside her, felt his hand slip from hers. "That's enough," Vivian said dangerously. But Isadora wasn't finished. 300,000, wasn't it? That's what he paid for a week of your time. How much is forever worth, I wonder?" The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Sarah spoke, her voice steady as stone. "You're right. He did pay me $300,000. And you know what? It was the best business decision I ever made." She turned to Damien, whose face had gone ashen. "Because it brought me to you. Not your money, not your empire. You. The man who paints sunrises and faces storms and fights for the people he loves." She stepped closer, taking his face in her hands. "I don't care if you're broke. I don't care if we have to start over with nothing. The only thing I care about is that we start over together." Something blazed to life in Damien's eyes. "Get out," he said quietly to Isadora, never taking his gaze from Sarah's face. "This isn't— Get out!" The words exploded from him with such force that Isadora actually stepped backward. She left without another word, Webb and his partner scrambling after her. In the silence that followed, Vivian cleared her throat delicately. "Well, I believe that concludes our business for the evening." But Damien and Sarah were lost in each other, the rest of the world falling away. "I love you," he whispered, the words torn from somewhere deep in his soul. "I love you too," she whispered back. And this time, when they kissed, it tasted like forever. 3 months later, the hospital room smelled like antiseptic and hope. Tommy Cole, 16 years old and finally, miraculously healthy, sat up in his bed with color in his cheeks and mischief in his eyes that looked exactly like his sister's. "So let me get this straight," he said, grinning at Damien. "You hired my sister to fake date you, fell in love for real, defeated a corporate conspiracy, and now you want to marry her? That's a simplified version, yes?" Damien shifted nervously in his chair. He'd faced boardrooms full of hostile investors with more confidence than he felt asking a 16-year-old for his blessing. "And you're asking me for permission? You're the most important person in her life. Your opinion matters more than anyone's." Tommy studied him with an intelligence far beyond his years, the kind that came from facing mortality too young. "What if I say no? Then I'll spend however long it takes proving I'm worthy of her." "Good answer." Tommy's grin widened. "But you already proved that when you had your company's medical insurance retroactively cover my surgery before you even knew if Sarah would stay with you." Damien felt heat rise in his cheeks. "How did you— Miranda told me when she visited last week. Did you really think Sarah wouldn't figure out that kind of paperwork doesn't process overnight by coincidence? I was hoping to surprise her." "Oh, you surprised her all right." "She cried for 2 hours. Happy tears." Tommy added quickly at Damien's alarmed expression. "She said it was the moment she knew you weren't just another rich guy trying to buy her affection. You were just— you. Being good because that's who you are." Through the room's window, they could see Sarah in the garden below, reading to a group of children from the pediatric ward. She'd been volunteering here since Tommy's surgery, bringing her warmth and stories to other kids fighting their own battles. "She has no idea you're here, does she?" Tommy asked. "She thinks I'm in a board meeting." "Technically, you are. This is the most important board meeting of your life." Tommy's expression grew serious. "Do you love her? Really love her? Not just the idea of her?" "I love that she reads the ending of books first because she can't handle the suspense. I love that she talks to plants and thinks they grow better with encouragement. I love that she can't pass a street musician without dropping money in their case even when she barely had money herself." Damien's voice softened. "I love that she chose to fight for us when I was ready to give up. I love that she sees the best in people even when they can't see it themselves." "And the worst?" Damien blinked. "What? What do you love least about her?" Because real love isn't just about the good stuff. The question caught him off guard, but only for a moment. "She puts everyone else first, always. She'd give away her last dollar if someone else needed it more, even if it meant she went hungry. She doesn't think she deserves good things." His jaw tightened. "She spent so many years just surviving that she forgot how to dream. And you want to teach her?" "I want to dream with her." Tommy was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. "Our parents used to say that the best kind of love was the kind that made you want to be better than you were. Sarah's been trying to be better her whole life, but she was doing it alone." He looked directly at Damien. "She's not alone anymore, is she? Never again? Then you have my blessing, but I have conditions." "Name them." "First, no prenup." Damien started. "Tommy, I would never." "I know. I want her to know too." "Second, you build her a library. A real one, with those rolling ladders and everything. She's always wanted one." "Done." "Third," Tommy's grin turned wicked, "you let me plan the proposal." The garden was Sarah's favorite place in the hospital. Tucked between the main building and the pediatric wing, it was a pocket of peace filled with flowers that bloomed year-round and benches where families could find quiet moments together. She was sitting on their bench, the one where Damien had first kissed her after Tommy's surgery, where they'd shared lunches and dreams and plans for their future, when she heard footsteps on the gravel path. "You're early," she said without turning around. "Board meeting run short?" Something like that. But when she turned, it wasn't Damien approaching. It was Tommy walking slowly but steadily, carrying something in his hands. "Tommy, you're supposed to be resting." "I'm fine, Sarah. Better than fine." He sat beside her, suddenly serious. "We need to talk." Her stomach dropped. "Are you okay? Did the doctors say I'm in complete remission." "That's not what this is about." He took her hands in his, and she noticed how much stronger they felt. "This is about you." "Me? You've spent the last 8 years taking care of me, sacrificing everything, college, career, your own happiness, to make sure I was okay. Tommy, you're my brother. I love you. It was never a sacrifice." "Yes, it was. And it was beautiful and selfless and completely you." His voice was gentle but firm. "But I'm okay now. I'm going to be okay. And it's time for you to stop taking care of me and start living for yourself." Tears pricked her eyes. "I don't know how." "Yes, you do. You've been doing it for 3 months. You've been happy, Sarah. Really, truly happy. And it's because you finally let someone take care of you for a change. But what if I get sick again? What if something bad happens? What if? Tommy shook his head. "You can't live in what if. Trust me. I learned that in chemo." He pressed something into her hands, a small velvet box. Her breath caught. "Tommy, what?" "It's not from me." His smile was radiant. "Turn around." She did, and there was Damien, walking toward them across the garden with the soft evening light behind him like a halo. He looked nervous and hopeful, and absolutely perfect. "Damien Blackwell," she whispered. "Serafina Cole," he said, stopping in front of her. 3 months ago, you agreed to pretend to love me for a week. You've been stuck with the real thing ever since." "Stuck is not the word I'd use." "What word would you use?" She opened the box with trembling fingers. Inside was a ring unlike anything she'd ever seen. Not ostentatious or overwhelming, but delicate and perfect, with a diamond that caught the light like captured starlight. "Blessed," she whispered. "I'd say I've been blessed. Then bless me back." He dropped to one knee right there in the hospital garden with Tommy grinning beside them and children's laughter echoing from the nearby playground. "Marry me, Sarah. Not because of contracts or time limits or anything fake, Marry me because I can't imagine a single day of my life without you in it. Yes, she said before he'd finished speaking. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. The ring slid onto her finger like it had been waiting there her whole life. When Damien kissed her, she tasted joy and promise and forever. In the background, she could hear Tommy whooping with delight and what sounded like applause from the hospital windows. I have one condition, she said against his lips. Anything. 5-minute engagement. He pulled back, startled. What? You gave me 5 minutes to decide if I'd pretend to love you. It changed my entire life. She smiled through her tears. Let's see what we can do with 5 minutes to plan a real wedding. 5 minutes to marry the woman of my dreams? Damien stood, pulling her into his arms. I've been ready for 3 months. Then what are we waiting for? And as they walked back toward the hospital, Tommy trailing behind them with the biggest smile she'd ever seen, Sarah realized something wonderful. Sometimes the best love stories don't start with once upon a time. Sometimes they start with 5 minutes to decide. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they never end. Yantras.